It's our turn, episode number 106, Games That Have Stood the Test of Time. In this episode, I welcome Erin Dean and Bez Shahriari to the co-host seats, and we talk about the games that are still great long after their initial publication.
This is the Dice Tower Network, adding games to your wish list since 2005.
Hosting for this episode is generously provided by our fantastic supporters on Patreon.com. If you'd like to help us out by pledging $1 per month or more, please visit patreon.com/OurTurnPodcast. Every dollar helps us to keep this show going strong. Hi, and welcome back to Our Turn. I'm Cathy Ford, and today I am joined by board game author Erin Dean and board game designer Bez. Hi, you two.
Hi.
Hi, Cathy. Hi, Erin. Hi, everyone.
So, as I said, Erin is an author that writes about board games, and she has a book out called For the Love of Board Games. And then, Bez, remind me, what games have you worked on?
So my first game was originally called In a Bind, but now it's called Yogi, which was republished by Gigamic, and they've done it in all sorts of countries, which is super exciting because it's in loads of languages that I don't even speak now.
Nice.
But I've carried on self-publishing, and I've got a game system which is currently called Wibble++, but it's going to change its name, and I've got a competition that will end on 1st of August because there's a lot of reasons I want to change the name. And my third thing is Kitty Cataclysm. It's all about chaos, card play, and being mean and spiteful to each other, kind of like cats.
That's great. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you both for joining me today on this episode. It's always nice to have new voices on the show. So thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we're going to start out like we usually do, talking about what we've played lately. Erin, why don't you go ahead and start us off? What game have you gotten to the table lately?
So lately I've been playing a game called Treasure Island. It was published last year, and I've really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. And basically it's a treasure hunting one versus all game.
I think I've heard of this one.
Yeah, so it was pretty, hot last year, and I think it's a game that, maybe could stand the test of time. But basically, you're all hunting for treasure. There's one person who knows where the treasure is. They've hidden it on their kind of player mat, and all the other players are pirates trying to find the treasure first. But eventually, the person who hid the treasure will get out of prison, and if you're taking too long, they can get to the treasure before you. But it's very cool because the board is actually dry erasable, and you actually do searches on the board by making circles, and you're like, is the treasure here? Is it here? And it's a dry erasable game board. It's a very, very unique game, and it really kind of puts you in the shoes of a pirate, and you really feel like you're hunting for treasure. But I've really enjoyed that with my gaming group, and I highly recommend people check it out.
And what rating do you give it?
I'd give it a 4.5, honestly. It's very high up there. I've really enjoyed it. It's not one of those games where it's like, oh, it's cool, and, I think it'll start collecting dust on my shelf. Other games are better, and it just gets forgotten. This is one that I think I'll pull out of my bag regularly.
Nice. I think I saw a review of this on the Dice Tower, but I haven't actually seen it get to the table yet. Bez, have you had a chance to play this one?
No, I've not played it myself, but I've seen it somewhere, and it does look gorgeous. It looks like there's quite a bit to it, but it looks super exciting, and I'd love to give it a go.
I think it's neat how a lot of games are including dry erase instead of sheets of paper.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that you can reuse it over and over. I think that's a neat new feature. I guess dry erase technology has come along far enough to make it practical now. Well,
and I'm quite interested to see more games kind of using the erasing as parts of the game rather than just the drawing, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Because there's not many games where that... But yeah, there's lots of things that could be done, and it's always exciting to see more things being pushed in different ways.
Yeah, definitely. What have you gotten to the table lately, Bez?
Well, I had the privilege to go to Cannes, where they have this amazing festival called Festival International de Jeux. It's not the film festival, it's a games festival. And they had this... Have you heard of Twin It?
I haven't. Erin?
So...
I haven't either.
Okay.
Have you heard of Jungle Speed?
I have played Jungle Speed. It's in my collection.
No, I haven't heard of that one.
So basically, it's by the same artist and designer, Thomas Forshaw, who made Jungle Speed with their friend Yako. And it's got a really interesting story where there used to be this big poster that he puts in toilets saying, hey, there's 50 images here, but 4 of them repeat. Can you find the 4 that repeat? And this would be a picture that people would put up in their bedrooms or in toilets or in bars for people to study. And then someone saw this and said, hey, let's make a board game out of this. And so they worked together to make a game where you flip over loads and loads of cards. And so you might end up with 30, 40 different cards, and they've all got the same colours. So it gets really confusing. But whenever you see 2 that are an identical match, then you've got to put your fingers on both of them. So it's kind of like Snap, but taken to the next level, if you know what I mean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it sounds like a cool speed game.
Yeah, it's really fun. And the nice thing about the Cannes edition is that, especially for the festival, they redid it. So again, they've got 120-something pictures, but every picture is based on a board game. So like there was one picture that's based on Rock, Paper, Scissors, and one picture that's based on Risk, another one based on Jungle Speed, actually, another one based on Ticket to Ride and Mysterium and all sorts of things. And so it was just really fun playing through this game. And not only do you get the fun of playing the game itself, but also the fun of saying, hey, I know that game, or nice. Hey, that's the unlock. And so you can't... I give it a 4.9 because I think it's really good, but I'm not sure if you can actually get it after the festival. But they're making a new one that's just called Board Game Edition. And so if that comes to America, I think you should definitely get it. But it's not worth, spending loads of money on because, don't go outside your budgets. I hate it when people, you got to get this straight away, do not. But yeah, it's a really lovely thing. So if you like fun games, definitely go out and buy it if you can.
Okay. And that's called Twin It, the Cannes edition.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. The game that I'm going to talk about is one that I've actually reviewed on here. But before we started recording, I was telling you that I was up until about 1:30 last night playing this game because it's one of my husband's favorites. And yesterday was his 60th birthday, and that is Outpost. Ooh. So this was designed by James Havarti and Timothy Moore, and was published by Stronghold Games. And this is one game that has stood the test of time. It was published in 1991, so it's been around for a while. I've only been playing it for probably about 5 or 6 years. I've played it a couple of dozen times, and I've probably only won it twice. And I didn't win but I think I came in second to last. this is a game that has a high player count. You can play it with up to 8 people.
Nice.
And basically, you're all on your own little asteroid, setting up a mining colony to start with. You start with an ore and 2 water factories. And you're sending your produce back to Earth, and you get paid in these certificates, and there's no change. So whenever you're buying anything, you have to either provide exact change or go over. And you're bidding for technology and building new labs, and eventually you're going to abandon your ore and water factories for higher, better paying factories and labs, and start developing new technology. It's a fun game. We nickname it math because the money all comes in different denominations. Each type of certificate has its own average, and some of the money is below average, some of the money is above average.
Wow.
So, you might get a water certificate for 9, 7, 6, and 10. And then you might get some ore certificates for 2, 5, 3, and 8. And you've got to put together what you're purchasing from these numbers, because like I said, there is no change. Which makes it kind of tricky. And then the more technology you get, the titanium factories have a higher average amount of money. The research labs have a higher amount. The new chemical have higher, and it just goes up and up and up. And with 7 players, you're playing until someone breaks past 75 points, and then that triggers end game, and there's a rush to spend all the last of your money, because money doesn't mean anything at the end except for a tiebreaker. And whoever has the highest number of points wins. That's very rarely ever me.
So, was it Mark?
No. Last night, Dwayne won. My friend Dwayne won. And our friend Eric came in second. So, but we all had a great time. I got a cake from a local grocery store here for Mark, and I had it decorated with a big Darth Vader head on it that breathes.
Oh, cool!
Because Mark really likes Darth Vader.
Wow.
So we
hopefully not as a role model.
You'd be surprised. It's just one of his favorite characters. Anyway, I did put 60 candles on the cake and made him blow them out.
Oh, wow. That's dedication right there.
Nice.
And he was able to blow them all out, not in one breath, but he did blow them all out. So we had a good time. And but getting back to Outpost, I would rate this game a solid 4. It's a good, solid game. It's not for everybody. We did have a couple of people playing last night that were not really thrilled to be playing this game, but because everybody was playing the game, they joined in and actually did fairly well. They both did pretty well. So, this is a favorite with our game group, and it's one that we enjoy getting to the table. It has actually been a little while since I played it. Definitely not on my 10 by 10 list, though. It's not one I'm going to be playing 10 times this year.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so that's
It
Outpost.
sounds like it must be a bit tiring.
It is a game that's on the longer side. I think this game was probably 3 or 4 hours long at least.
Wow.
Yeah. But I enjoy it. We enjoy it every time we get it to the table. So, anyway, have either of you had a chance to play Outpost?
I have not, no.
No, neither have I.
Okay.
I've played some long games like DMACR and some of the 18XX games, but I've never played Outpost.
Okay.
I do quite like a little bit of economic stuff, so it's one that, I'll maybe yeah, keep on the lookout. I mean,
Yeah,
if it's one of your favorites, then
it's an engine building game. That was a comment that Mark made last night. He just couldn't get his engine going in time, and he missed out on a couple of scientific advances, and that just kind of made it so his engine sputtered. And and I was kind of feeling the same way. I missed out on the titanium factories, and that just, if you're able to get in on the titanium factories, that just revs your engine up and you're off to the races. So anyway, that's Outpost, and that's what we've been playing. We have set up and been referring to and rating games by our own rating scale. Here's how we are using this scale. 5. Buy this now. 4. A good solid game. 3. Decent with some bugs. 2. Has great potential as kindling. And 1. Give me back the time I spent playing it. Today for the interview, I am welcoming Brett Fodor to the show. Brett is the co-designer of Dino Duel, which is on Kickstarter now and doing pretty well. Brett, welcome to our turn.
Thanks so much for having me, Cathy. Appreciate it.
So briefly, tell me just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am from the Cleveland, Ohio area. I was born and raised in Northeast Ohio. Went to high school in a small town called Warren, Ohio, and graduated in 2008, went on to Kent State University, which is a relatively famous and infamous university, I guess, in Ohio. A lot of people probably have heard of it because of the Kent State shootings in the 60s with the Vietnam War. But pretty good school. Graduated from there and went into sales. So I currently work full time as a sales rep, and then that's pretty much where I'm at right at this moment. We started off. This is actually our first board game that we've designed. My business partner and I created a company called Playful, Plaful, and our tagline is "Bring fun to life." So, hoping that we can transition into full-time game designers at some point here in the future. But for right now, we're just focused on our project ahead of us right now. So,
it's always exciting to get a new project off the ground like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
it's a ton of fun too.
I just started a nonprofit company.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to try and spread the board gaming love in the Sacramento, California area, and also try to kind of diversify our hobby a little bit. So we're targeting different communities within the Sacramento area. So I understand where you're coming from when you say you're just getting things off the ground.
Yep. It's a grind, but it's a good one.
Yep, absolutely. So tell me about Dino Duel.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dino Duel is I would classify it as a light strategy, but also kind of a party game. It's easy enough to pick up in 5 minutes with the basic mechanisms of the game, but there's also a layer of strategy that takes several playthroughs to really understand how the cards work and when and where you should play the cards and what cards can be impactful at certain times as opposed to others. So that part of it can take several playthroughs to really understand it. But the basic function of the game is 5 to 10 minute take up, and then it's basically it's a 2 to 4 player game with one deck of cards. We also have expansion packs that you can add to the deck in order to add additional players. And you can add as many players as you want, as long as you have enough expansions or core decks to support that. And essentially, the game is played. It's a turn-based card game. So each player takes turns going clockwise. We normally start off by rolling to see who goes first, and then turns consist of 2 actions. You can do any of these 2 actions in any order, and you can duplicate the action, but you can draw cards, you can play cards, or you can duel opponents. And the objective of the game is to fossilize the most dinosaurs, and you do that by a couple of different ways. You can duel against opponents, and if you win the duel, you get to fossilize their dinosaur. There's also extinction cards, which are kind of like wild cards, that will remove multiple different dinosaurs from play all at the same time, and those would go towards your fossil units as well. And then there's also some game mechanics built into the cards, where as you play the cards, they will allow you to fossilize dinosaurs. And basically, you keep drawing and doing turns until the deck runs out, and whoever has the most points in fossilized dinosaurs at the end of the game will win. So that's a quick rundown.
Now, do you earn more points for fossilizing certain dinosaurs? Like, does a T-Rex get you more points than, say, a smaller dinosaur?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So the dinosaurs all have point values, right? So there's level 1 dinosaurs, which are worth 1 point, level 2 dinosaurs, which are worth 2 points, and level 3 dinosaurs, which are worth 3 points, obviously. So you want to fossilize the highest value dinos, and those are all right on the cards. Pretty easily relatable there. But yeah, so certain dinosaurs will be better to fossilize because of the effect that they have when they're in play, and other times you're going to want to just capitalize on the most points that are available. So like I said, a little bit of strategy involved, but most of the time you just want to get as many level 3s as you can.
Okay. So what led you to be interested in game design?
Actually, it's kind of I don't know if it's a funny story, but my business partner Steven and I have been friends since as long as either of us can remember, probably 5 or 6 years old, and went to high school together, went to college together. And then after college, he took a job in Arkansas working for Walmart, and so we didn't really get to see each other for several years. He started a family, and was doing the corporate grind, and then in 2017, he actually was offered a position to move back up to Ohio and be closer to family, and so he accepted that position. And we met all those years ago through a youth bowling league. So that was something that, we both had an affinity for and hadn't been able to do for a while. So when he came back into town, he reached out and said, "Hey man, do you want to do this bowling league with me?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And we started just kind of hanging out again and bowling together. And what we would do is, before the bowling league would start on Tuesdays, we would have different games that we would play. So anything from, Pinochle to Risk to Exploding Kittens to run the gambit of, basically any game that we had access to. And eventually we just kind of sat down and said, "Hey man, this is pretty fun. Maybe we could figure out a way to, create our own game." And thus the idea for, our company and Dino Duel kind of spawned out of that.
Nice. It's always neat to rekindle old friendships, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So, how did you come up with the initial idea for the dinosaur theme? That seems to be a pretty popular theme right now.
Yeah. Well, I guess that kind of came about through a multitude of different ways, but we thought that the initial thing that we really wanted to achieve was we wanted to create a game that could be played by people of any age, really, and appreciated and enjoyed by people of any age, with the exception of, maybe any younger than 7 may have some issues with like reading and comprehending the cards.
Oh, sure.
But family-friendly content was something very important to us. And so, what's more family-friendly than cartoon dinosaurs? And so that was a big part of it. The other part of it was, we had really been inspired, which I think a lot of game makers were inspired by, the Exploding Kittens team, and that was initially kind of what got our brains working towards what kind of game we wanted to make. And so we also had Steven's kind of like he does a lot of what I'll call collecting, where he does like website domain collecting and different trademarks and things. He'll just like get them sometimes because they can be valuable, and he just enjoys doing stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
And so he actually had a trademark for Dino Duel. It was something that had been abandoned by creators from I'm not exactly sure how long ago, but it's been quite some time. And that was actually one of the challenges that we ran into initially was, we had this trademark that we had ownership of, but there was also another game that was created years and years ago called Dino Duel. So bringing us to the forefront, the Kickstarter campaign has really helped for that. And it's helped with like brand recognition, because that game obviously isn't created anymore. It's not in print.
Right.
And, so now we've got our new, and I never played the other game, so I guess I can't say improved, but our new version of Dino Duel going on. So I think that answered your question. Maybe not.
Yeah, I did. So what was the most challenging aspect of creating your game?
Well, being that we had never created a game before, pretty much everything. We went through probably 15 different iterations of gameplay before we really settled on something that we felt had the replayability that we wanted, but also what I call it the oh yeah moment, where all the odds are stacked against you and you shouldn't really be the winner, but you end up winning anyways, and you just have this like surge of emotion that flies out of you most of the time through an oh yeah. And so that was kind of that was what we really wanted to achieve, that we had never done before, and that probably posed the biggest challenge. But like I said, we've play tested with over 100 people, multiple different age groups, and the initial game that we had created looks very, very different from what we have rolled out here through the Kickstarter campaign, and I think in a very good way. We had to do a lot of just grinding and getting opinions from other game makers and game players, and the board game community overall seems to be very, very willing to help in any way possible that isn't a ridiculous ask. So that's one thing that's been great, is to kind of come in without really knowing anything about the industry and just seeking answers from people that really don't have any obligation to help, but they're just willing to do so because they just have a natural beneficence to want to be helpful to other game makers. So the toughest thing I'd say was creating a compelling element of the game that would make you want to come back and play it again, right? Because it only takes about 15 to 20 minutes max to play one round of Dino Duel, and so we wanted to have that. Okay, now I want to play another game. Let's shuffle up the cards and do it again.
Mm-hmm.
That was a little challenging for sure.
Now, what made you decide to self-publish instead of going to publishers, shopping your game around to different publishers?
Yeah. Well, firstly, we didn't really know how that process would work, coming in as complete, new people in the industry. We weren't really sure we had the connections to get the game in front of those types of people. And we wanted to have, I guess, autonomy over the product that we were creating, because we felt like, we're new to this, and we want to make it right, and we want to make it the way that we want it to be, right? The way that's fun for us and we think will be fun for other people. So I think those two things kind of played into it. Just the fact that we wanted to be able to create a product that we had control over, and then also just being new and not really knowing what we were doing, kind of made sense for us to self-publish.
Okay, that makes sense. So, how was the writing the rules process for you? I've heard that can be really challenging.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a challenge. Luckily, as far as complexity goes, the rules of Dino Duel are not terribly complex. And again, we wanted to have the game have an appeal for like a family party or something that just is relatively easy for the uptake. So initially we did have some really complicated rules, and what we kind of found was through playtester feedback, keep it simple, stupid kind of thing. It doesn't have to be an overly crazily complex objective and gameplay to be fun. And in this case, it was sort of detracting from our ultimate goal, which was that kind of fun party family atmosphere. So we started off with some really complex rules and then simplified them down and just tried to get all the meat and potatoes of what the complex rules brought to the game into a simpler, smaller package. And so that was kind of how we determined what the rule set was going to be, and then writing it out on it's amazing how Google shared documents are just lifesavers in this day and age.
Isn't that a wonderful invention?
Yeah, it really is. And it's, the fact that it's free is just, it's incredible. So yeah, we've just basically simplified it down as much as we could, and then started kind of writing it out. And I think the first generation rule book was, it was probably about maybe 3 pages long or so, just scripted out exactly what you do in the game. And then Steven went through and kind of made some edits and did some nice little design work to it, and got it into the final version that we have for gamers today.
Cool. So besides your game, what's your favorite game?
My favorite game ever is probably Pinochle, which I know it's not technically a board game. It is a card game, obviously. I grew up in a family that played a lot of euchre. So every time we would get together as a family, we would play, we would play euchre. And then when I discovered Pinochle, which is basically, euchre on steroids, if I can say that, it just was a very compelling game for me. As far as board games go, I'm a traditionalist. I always go back to the classic titles, the Risk, the Monopoly, the Saris of the world. But I do enjoy, more new age games with their own nuances. Settlers of Catan is one that I'm a really big fan of. I actually just recently purchased Arkham Horror.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Game.
Uh-huh.
And I haven't really experimented too much with cooperative games, so it's a little bit of a learning experience for me. But the content of the game and the objective of the game is really compelling, so I've enjoyed that as well. But
I haven't played Arkham. I haven't played the card game of Arkham Horror, but I've played Arkham Horror, which is a very large board game. And it's lots of fun, but it takes a lot of time. And then there is a simplified version of it called Elder Sign, that takes a lot of the elements of Arkham Horror, but turns it into like a dice game. So that's a lot of fun too. And then there's a streamlined version of Arkham Horror called Eldritch Horror. And they all come from the same company, from Fantasy Flight. So, those are all fun games.
I'll have to take a look into those.
Yeah, they're all real fun. So, what's the next project for you after Dino Duel?
So we have a couple games that we're working on in development right now. we're not exactly sure which one is going to be the next published work for Playful. The two concepts that we have, one is sort of like a gag game, if you will, and it's got an elderly theme. So I don't know how much I can really reveal about the specifics of the gameplay, but
Okay.
it's more of like just a funny, hey, this would be a cool gag gift kind of game, and you can get a few plays out of it. And the other one that we're looking into right now is it's sort of like it's another kind of party game, but it's like if Cards Against Humanity had a theme that was not so, I guess, crass and intense for adults, more of like a high school friendly type theme game, and we've added some interesting elements to the turn system and making it so that because there's 100 games out there that basically are exactly like Cards Against Humanity. They just put a little spin on it, and we've kind of taken that and gone a bit further with it. But right now we're tentatively calling it the nickname game. So those are the two projects we're currently working on, and as we continue down this road and get more feedback from the people that are supporting us and some of the things that they might want to see, we could go down a totally different road. So we'll see where it takes us.
Okay. So how can people find out more about your game, and where can they pick up a copy?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently the Kickstarter campaign is, that's our pre-sale platform. We are currently fully funded, and we're moving towards stretch goals. We've actually unlocked one stretch goal, well, two stretch goals so far, and we've got several more, planned. And you can find all the information about all that stuff on the Kickstarter campaign page. There's also gameplay videos, that go in depth and show you exactly what it's like to play a game of Dino Duel. All the cards and everything, all the elements and the art are housed on the page as well, and it gives you a pretty good rundown. So definitely check out the Kickstarter campaign page. Just go to Kickstarter.com and type in Dino Duel in the search bar. That's the best way to go about finding out more information. And then we also have a website. It's dinoduel.com. So, feel free to take a look there. Right now, it's more of a landing page that's just routing people to the Kickstarter, but we did that strategically for, the campaign, and we'll have it updated with all the information about the company and everything after we're done with the campaign. And then playful.com, Plaful, is our primary website for the company and as a publisher. So those are the best ways to go about that. We also have Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Our Instagram and our Twitter tags are the same. They're at Dino_Duel. And then our Facebook is at Dino Duel Game. So those are all the different mediums that, if people are interested in learning more, they can get more info there. Excellent.
And of course, people can find all those links on our show notes for this episode. So thanks for coming on, and I wish you good luck. I know you're already more than funded. As of this recording, you're like $8,000 over your original goal.
Yeah, we're at last time I checked, it was $18,830 out of our $10,000 goal.
Wow,
so,
that's incredible.
Like I said, we're really, being that it's our first game and just seeing the overwhelming support that's come from the community, it's really exciting, and we're pumped up. We want to get as good of a rendition of the game as we possibly can out to people. So we've got some stretch goals planned, some exclusive Kickstarter only cards, upgrades to the card quality, upgrades to the box quality. We even have an alternate gameplay that we're kind of farting around with that's friendly for ages probably as young as 5. So
nice.
It hasn't officially been announced yet, but we've been working with it a little bit, and I think it's something that could be compelling for people that like the Dino theme and would maybe want to include younger children. So But yeah, and we also on the campaign page we do have a pledge tier that you can create your own custom dinosaur. And we've seen a lot of people get pretty excited about that, and we're working on designing the illustrations and the game mechanics for those people. So that's pretty exciting too. Definitely something worth checking out.
That's neat. Well, like I said, I wish you good luck with it. And how long does the campaign run for?
So we have 20 days left. The campaign will run through April 26th. And then obviously we'll have the late pledge option as well. But
Oh, nice.
yeah, from now until April 26th, we'll be doing the Kickstarter campaign for Dino Duel.
Excellent. All right. Well, congratulations on your first successful Kickstarter, and I wish you a lot of luck.
Thank you so much, Cathy. Really appreciate you having me on.
Okay, for today's hot topic, we are talking about games that have stood the test of time. Now, these can be modern hobby board games that have been around for quite a long time, or these can be older games that have been around for decades or centuries. People have been playing games for as long as there have been people, as far as I know. We're also going to talk about how modern hobby board games have been influenced by these older games. So, Erin, why don't you go ahead and start us off? What's your favorite game that you believe has stood the test of time?
Well, I went with, for my two picks, I went with some games that are considered the modern hobby game kind of era, but are still like 10 years old. So my first pick is Ticket to Ride. It was published by Days of Wonder in 2004. This was actually my game that got me into the hobby, so it kind of holds a special place in my heart.
Nice.
And Ticket to Ride is still super popular.
It is.
And I think the reason for that is just because it's an awesome gateway game. For those who haven't played Ticket to Ride, basically it's a train game where everyone's working against each other to try to create the best routes and earn the most points and, complete as many tickets as they can. So like San Diego to New York City, which I don't even know if San Diego is a city on there, but you get my point. Mm-hmm. And basically you're going to be collecting train cards and, it's a hand management game. Even a little bit of, I would say, set collection. And you're basically trying to complete routes and get your passengers to where they need to go to get points, and the person with the most points wins. But I still play it from time to time. It's still popular, and I think as more and more people are introduced to the hobby, it keeps coming up in conversation as a great, gateway game. And I don't know if I can think of any games that have been directly influenced from Ticket to Ride. I mean, I think hand management and set collection were around before Ticket to Ride was published.
But I think it has influenced things in that it has introduced a lot of people to those mechanics who wouldn't have been introduced to them.
Definitely.
Before,
I think this game is a game where it may be your first time you've ever played a set collection or hand management game, and gateway game meaning that it's just a great game to introduce people to these new mechanics that they may not have been exposed to yet.
Yeah, it's easy to teach and easy to learn. I've only played it once, actually.
Okay.
And it was kind of because I said, you know what? I've heard about this game. I've never played it. Does anybody own it? Oh, Dwayne, you own it. Can you please bring it to game night so I can, play it? And he did, and he taught it to me. And I went out and bought a copy at a flea market, and have never cracked it open. And I told my husband recently that, we need to get that to the table because it's a game that I need to learn and be able to teach.
Yeah, it's definitely one that I'll continually bring out for people who are just starting to get their feet wet in the hobby.
How about you, Bez? Have you played this one?
Yeah, I have, and I was kind of wondering whether you thought that all the, reinventions, the Ticket to Ride Europe and Marklin and New York and, London will be actually coming out soon. Whether you thought that all these variants were part of the reason why it's stuck around.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's because it's so accessible and because it's such an easy to learn and easy to play game that it was bound to have expansions and games that expanded upon the first game. My personal favorite out of the ones I've played is Ticket to Ride Europe. It just kind of has a little bit more meat to the bones without adding too much complication. But yeah, I agree with you, Bez. I think definitely adding more games to the product line, the Ticket to Ride product line, hasn't hurt the game. It's made people more aware of it, and it's come up in conversation more because there are so many variants of the original game.
I think it must be similar to how Power Grid has different maps, and each map is just the rules are slightly different.
Right.
The basic rules are still there, but there are some exceptions. Like in Australia, you can't build nuclear power plants, but when you are instead you have uranium mines.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I just think that adds variety to the game and keeps people who enjoy the basic game coming back for more because it changes the playability and the adventure of it.
I kind of feel like any game, if it's selling well enough, I guess, is going to probably get some expansions or completely new versions if it can. And like the New York version, which is really cut down, and instead of having to pay 40, 50 quid, or however many dollars it is over there, you suddenly only have to pay 20 quid. And that's something that someone who's never bought a board game before, who's used to paying literally a tenner for Monopoly, which they can only afford to sell it so low because they're printing, so many millions of Monopoly. But with Ticket to Ride, I think that the New York and the smaller London ones are probably going to help it to get even more traction, just because it is a wee bit simpler and it's easier for people to get into it. I played actually the New York one for the first time at home maybe 8 months ago, something like that, and one of my housemates, McCall, said, it was good fun, but if it was any longer I would have been really fed up by the end of it. And so, because they're not really a gamer, and so for them it was like, okay, this is, having to think about things in a new way, because for us, maybe we think of Ticket to Ride as a fairly light game, but if you don't really play games, it is actually, there's a lot of tactics and a bit of strategy there.
Yeah, there is.
Yep. That's why I think a lot of people, like I said earlier, reference it as a gateway game. It's great for people who are, new to the hobby. So it's a good way for people to get introduced and see what they can handle and what they like, and get introduced to more mechanics than just regular card games or Monopoly.
Definitely add some variety to the board game hobby. Yep. All right, Bez, what is the first game you're going to talk about?
Well, I wanted to talk about Bridge. Have either of you played Contract Bridge?
No, I asked my grandma last time I visited with her if she would teach me, and she says, we need 4 for that.
Yeah, you definitely do.
All right. So, but she has been playing it probably most of her life. And she just celebrated her 99th birthday earlier this month. So, that's quite a long time. So go ahead, tell us about it.
Well, I think I heard you on the podcast saying that you only played a trick-taking game for the first time relatively recently. Is that right?
Yeah, that is.
And so I was doing a lot of research into, the whole history today, spending a few hours on this. And it's fascinating because, it was pretty much one of the first games that you got for the decks of playing cards. So around the 1500s, you had all these trick-taking games coming out. And then in the 1600s, you had a game called Whist, where it was a partner game, and for the first time it had to be a team game. It had to be exactly 4 players, and you had to try and work together to guess, well, if I'm winning a trick, then there's no point in your partner trying to win it as well. And so it changes the strategy quite a bit. And then they came out with Bridge, where basically the only change that made is that the dealer's partner basically puts down all their cards, so they don't even play, which is kind of weird if you think about it. But then the dealer chooses the suit. So suddenly, rather than the trump suit being random, you're making that decision of, oh, what have I got the most of in my hand? Or should I select no suit? And so there's an added layer of strategy. And then it was in 1904, basically, that you had auction bridge, where rather than it just being a case that the dealer always chose, you started going round the table and saying, okay, I bet that I can get this many tricks. I bet I can get this many tricks if the trump is this. I bet I can get this many tricks if the trump is this. And so you'd be kind of outbidding, betting that you can do better than the other people. And then the people who claim that they could do the best, it would almost be like the game says, okay, now you've said you can do really well, now prove it, and actually win that many tricks. And then it basically finished off in 1925, where there's one person who's credited on Board Game Geek, who's Harold Vanderbilt. But as far as I can understand it, Harold Vanderbilt wasn't really so much a game designer, I mean, as a game developer in the modern sense, because they took Auction Bridge and they spent like hours on a steamboat ferry ride for ages, basically working out the perfect maths and working out the perfect scoring, and everyone basically said, hey, this is so much better. And within a couple of decades, there was like a world federation for people playing bridge. And apparently in the 40s, there were 44% of American households were playing bridge, which is crazy to think about. So that's nearly half of people. And it's obviously come down a bit since then. I mean, there's not so many people, and I think that's due to the slight inaccessibility, if you know what I mean. Because it is a brilliant game, but you need to know not just how to bid, because now there's a whole system that you don't just do what they call natural bids, which means if you say 5 of clubs, that means you really believe that you could win 5 tricks if the suit is clubs. But maybe there's a conventional bid, because they started this whole system of saying a bid, but you don't actually mean what you're saying. You kind of use it as a sort of code, if you know what I mean. And so if you say, okay, 1 of spades, that doesn't actually mean anything. It's kind of sending a not so secret signal, because everyone has to understand this. And it's a lifestyle game, and it's a team-based game. And I think that just generally that whole thing, you know, there's so many trick-taking games now, but weirdly, there's not that many team games. And I think that's quite a shortcoming, that, you know, in the modern board game things, maybe we should have more team games. And also, I think that the reason why it has gone out of fashion is maybe because it is such a big undertaking to learn all these conventions as a lifestyle game, and maybe that's why games since that time have tried to become a bit more accessible.
That could be. It's funny because when you talk about team games, the only team games that I can think of are dexterity games. And other than bridge, I can't think of any team games that I've played where
One of my favorite team games is Captain Sonar, which came out, I want to say
that's true.
Say 2 years ago. There's a lot of party games that are team games, and there's also a lot of real-time team games as well.
That's true.
Yeah, even Twin It, the speed snap type game that I mentioned before, that has a team variant, which I really like, because it means if one person's the best, then they don't always win, because you put them on a team with other people and it changes things. So it's got kind of a mixture of cooperation and competition.
Right.
And like, it's basically, I would give this game on the rating scale of 3.7 because I think it's a brilliant game, but just I see the inaccessibility and the fact that you do need to learn all these contracts like a really big barrier. But at the same time, there are still so many people who adore it, and there's clubs around. And I would say, if you're super into games, then, go out and try some of these classic things and try, maybe spend a couple of sessions, like just a few days, trying to explore the game and see how you get on with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, these older games are always worth investigating and playing. Like I said, I had asked my grandma to teach me. I just need to wait for, my grandma and my mom and my aunts to get together so that we can play. So, all right. The first game I'm going to talk about is, I think, the oldest one on the list, and that is Mancala. Have you both played Mancala?
I have.
Yeah.
I played it a lot in grade school when we had like rainy or snowy days. They'd have games, and that was one of them. And yeah, Mancala is definitely a classic that I've played.
I didn't actually play this until I was working in an educational toy store, and that was one of the games that we were selling, and I had to be able to explain it. And so one of my coworkers taught me how to play it, and I was just, I can't believe I haven't played this before. So the board, it's a 2-player game, and the board is a series, I think, of 6 pairs of divots in the board, and you are taking, there are stones in each of the divots, or grains of rice or pebbles, whatever, and you take these little stones and you drop one into each of the divots. And then there are a couple of larger...
kind of banks, almost.
Yeah, banks at the end, one for you and one for your opponent. And you are dropping the stones in until you run out. And then your opponent goes and they pick a one on their side and they drop them around. And you're basically, you're just dropping these stones, one in each little divot until all of the stones are in either end of the board, and then you count them up, and whoever has the highest score wins. And this game has been around, well, Board Game Geek says 700. I'm assuming that's 80.
I would assume so.
But I think I had read that it had been around a lot longer than that. It originated in Africa. And I actually saw a news article not too long ago where they had found something similar to a Mancala board carved into some rock. So it wasn't a movable one. They just 2 people sat down, they carved out the board and started playing. And it's still there today. But this has influenced other games. One that I can think of right off the top of my head is 5 Tribes, where you have the same Mancala movement. You pick up a group of people from one square on the board, and then you distribute them across the board going in order. And the different color of people mean different things. So it is a variant. It's not exactly like Mancala, but it uses that Mancala mechanism.
Yep. I love 5 Tribes. Yeah. It's in my personal collection, and I always tell people, it's like, do you know Mancala? Okay, good. This is what the core mechanic is, and a lot of people have played Mancala, and it's a good way to kind of ease them into teaching 5 Tribes.
I wonder if Mancala's better known in the US than it is over here in the UK, because I only played it on 2 occasions. One was like 10 years ago when someone brought it to a board games club and was like, oh, here, I've got this exciting game that's this. And then also one was actually at Cannes where I just went, and they had like an entire section, probably about, I don't know, 40 or 50 tables of people playing this game. And
Wow.
one
Wow.
day I played with a friend who I was traveling with, and then we played each other. And then the next day, when I was on my own, I played against a demonstrator, and I played them like 3 times, and they beat me soundly all 3 times. So it was quite fun to sort of see the depth of strategy that there is, if you know what I mean. And they were quite nice about it. They sort of said, yeah, they kind of explained how they were beating me as they were doing it, if you know what I mean. And so, I feel like, it's kind of a totally new twist on abstract games and a different source, and maybe it's not, I don't know about the US, but it hasn't influenced UK designers as much as chess and Go, for example.
Well, I do know that this is a game that is sold in our big box stores, so it's
Wow.
sold in mass market. So
Yeah,
I think that's how it
bookstores
gets.
and
Yeah, and Walmart and Target sell it, and then educational bookstores sell it. So I think maybe it does have a lot of exposure here. I know when you can get into the big stores like Walmart and Target, that gives games a lot more exposure. A lot of modern hobby board games like Ticket to Ride and Pandemic are being sold in Walmart and Target now, which is starting to open up the hobby market to other people as they're seeing these new games come out. I know that when I tell people over here that my hobby is playing board games, the response I get most often is, "Oh, you mean like Monopoly?" Well, Monopoly is a game that got me started, but I haven't actually played it in several years because I have a whole bunch of other games. And then I explained that, between 1 and 5,000 new games come out every year, and their eyes just kind of bug out. Really?
yeah, they have no idea.
Yeah. All right, Erin, what's your next one?
So my second pick that a game that has stood the test of time is probably the most recent game that we'll talk about, and it's called Pandemic. We mentioned it just a second ago, and it was published in 2008, I believe, by Z-Man Games was the first publisher, but they're the most well-known publisher of the game and the current publisher of the game. It's a game you can find at Target and some, like Books A Million and some other mainstream stores here in the U.S. But similar to my first game, it's a game that I think has stood the test of time, 10 plus years, because of its easy to learn, easy to play mechanics while still introducing new board gamers to new mechanics. It's a lot of people, it's the first cooperative experience they've ever had in a board game. Obviously there were some cooperative board games before Pandemic, but I think Pandemic was the game that really made cooperative board games a staple in the industry. And you'll see a lot more cooperative games after the introduction of Pandemic. So
Definitely.
For those of you who don't know what Pandemic is, basically it's a game where you're all working together. Someone's going to play as the doctor, someone's going to play as the medical specialist, and everyone's going to kind of take a role, and you're going to try to save the world from infection. And it's a very cool cooperative game. It's the first cooperative board game I ever played. I still have it in my collection, and it's something that, it's a game I like to introduce to people who are not necessarily, who have not been exposed to cooperative games, and maybe, their personalities and how that I know them, they'd probably be more comfortable with the cooperative game rather than a competitive game. And I think it's a game that has stood the test of time. It's still being sold, tons and tons of copies each year, and it's still readily available. It's one of those evergreen games where it's continually in print, and it's not a hard game to find, and I think there's a solid reason for that because of its, really making cooperative games mainstream in the modern board gaming hobby.
And there are expansions, and there's at least one spin-off game, Pandemic Contagion,
Yep.
which is a competitive game where you're all playing the virus instead of the scientists trying to wipe out the virus.
Yeah, and there's actually
Iberia, and obviously Legacy and Legacy Season 2.
Yep.
And
and they did Pandemic Cthulhu.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of different variations. The next one they're coming out in the Pandemic product line is actually a real-time experience. So, yes, it's going to be cooperative. I believe it's cooperative at least. And it's real-time. So, if you thought, the first Pandemic was, pressure-ridden and stressful, this one's going to bring it to a whole new level because you're going to be under a timer and you need to be able to think quickly because the world is depending on you. And I'm excited for that one because I'm a huge fan of real-time games. Whereas some people hate them, I'm one of those people who loves real-time games.
I have a cousin that actually, I don't know if she still works for them, but she used to work for the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control here in the United States. And I was thinking I need to get this game for her.
Oh, definitely. I think she'd like it. And she'd probably have a whole bunch of, probably commentary to the game.
Probably.
I've got...
All right. Yeah, that's a good one.
I've got the Forbidden Island, which is sort of a simpler version that was made by Matt Leacock, the same designer, afterwards.
Yep.
And I quite like that just because it's marginally easier to introduce someone who's literally never played a board game before. But I do find it's interesting how most of the top co-ops are still made by Matt Leacock. It's the Thunderbirds, the Forbidden Desert, Forbidden Sky, and Matt Leacock's just really knocking it out of the park with the co-op stuff.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yep. In fact, I was just thinking I might take Forbidden Island to teach my grandma today when I go visit her.
Yeah, she'll probably like that.
Yeah. All right, Bez, what's next on your list?
So next on my list is actually possibly definitely one of my favorite games ever, and it's called Go. Although, when it was first made, in China it's called Weiqi, or in Korea it's Baduk, and it's not so popular in the UK or USA, as far as I'm aware, compared to in those countries. I mean, in those countries, it's Go that's popular rather than chess, but here it's kind of the other way around. And depending on who you ask, the earliest... It's at least 2,500 years old anyway, because there was an actual recorded game in 548 BC, according to a couple of articles I read. But some people say that it's even 6,000 years old, but that's, all hearsay, and how can you really tell? But for anyone who doesn't know it, Go is a lovely game where there's a big grid, traditionally 19 by 19, although you can play on a smaller board, and you put, one person's got black stones, one person's got white stones, you put your stones literally on any intersection you want, and then if at any point a group of stones doesn't have an empty point next to it, all of them are surrounded by the enemy pieces, then they all get removed and captured. And so it becomes all about trying to create territory and having multiple eyes and loads of spaces for your things to breathe, as it were. And there's a weird kind of almost philosophy, and there's all this terminology which isn't part of the rules, but it just develops, which I think is a wonderful show of elegance, how simple the rules are, but then it's only recently, as in 2016 was the first time that computers were able to convincingly beat humans. And I think it was 2013 was when they started making really big steps, and by 2016 they had a 4-1 victory against the top player, which people were amazed by. But the reason that I love it, it's not just about reaching into the breadths of history, but it's also that it's got a wonderful handicap system, so everyone knows their strength. So if I say, okay, I'm 10Q and you're 15Q, or maybe I'm 10Q and you're 5Q, then that means that the person who's higher up the rank will give the other person 5 starting stones, and it basically means that they've got an advantage, but you're both playing exactly the same game. And there's nothing like that in chess. I mean, people don't really play with less clock time on the clock for one player or for with fewer pieces because that changes the game too much. But even in a casual setting with Go, it's kind of really built into the culture, and I really love that. And what I also love is that because you're just placing things rather than moving things around, the board slowly fills up and then it pushes itself towards an end. And I guess as the first ever abstract strategy game, it is probably influencing everything that came after it, arguably. Like every sort of tile placement, every game that's about surrounding things, every
area control.
Yeah. And there's so much in there, and still, like, on Board Game Geek, I'm subscribed to that game, and there's so many discussions happening every day about it. People saying, hey, can you help me solve this problem? Or I don't understand this problem, can you explain the solution to me? Or people saying, hey, this is a really... And
nice.
I think that it just shows that even though computers can beat us at games, that doesn't make the game any worse, because we can still have fun being bad at it. And even though we're now demonstrably worse than computers, I'm still having fun playing the games because it's all about the people at the end of the day. I think that's quite a nice thing to remember.
I haven't actually played Go, although it is one that I have been looking to play, just because it is, such a long-lasting game, and I've heard so much about it, but I don't know that I know anybody that owns a copy. If you know me and you own a copy, please bring it to a game night, because I would like to try it.
You can totally play on a smaller board. I mean, your first ever game, you can play even on a 7x7 board, which is smaller than recommended, but for your first few games, it just lets you get to grips with the game, and then you move on to the 9x9 and then the 13x13, and the 19x19 is kind of a game that, if you're taking your time over it, it'll probably take you a couple of hours to play. So you might not want to commit that sort of time straight away to it.
So it sounds like it's a game that's probably influenced things like Risk and Kingdom Builder, and
I think a lot of abstract games probably were somewhat introduced to it, because this honestly could be one of the first abstract games ever created. So it kind of set the tone as far as the possibilities of using a similar mechanic.
I mean, there is definitely, I think, an Egyptian game that, I mean, there's obviously arguments over which is the first ever board game or whatever, but it's probably the first one that's still being played today, for sure. And it's just kind of influences people to be playful, and also probably also just to take games seriously, because I heard somewhere that people were saying that as a samurai in Japan, if you wanted to be a good proper person, you had to do like a few things. You had to do calligraphy, music, play Go, and wield a sword. I think those were like the 4 things you had to do to be a proper samurai.
It's kind of like earning a degree here in the United States or in Britain. You don't just take your major, you also have to take art history and philosophy and psychology and other things that you may not think they're directly related to your major, but they are. And I can see the same requirements in being a samurai, sure. It's not all about just fighting. You have to have exposure to other things to be a better rounded individual.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's your last one, Cathy.
Yep. The last one I'm going to talk about is another oldie but goodie, and that's chess, which was first published in 1475. I'm not sure if that's when it was first played in India or if that's when it was first brought to the West. I'm not sure. But it is a 2-player game where you're facing off with rival armies. and it's an abstract game, and it's influenced loads of other games. Off the top of my head, I can think of checkers. And then one of my favorites is Onitama.
Oh, definitely.
It's another 2-player game. And then recently I've been playing a game as an app quite a bit, and I realized that it has some chess in it as well, and that's Istanbul. You're moving around. The board is made up of tiles that are different parts of the city, but you're moving and counter-moving your merchant around the city. And if you land on a tile where the other merchant is, you have to pay them money. So basically, and that reduces your resources. So sometimes you might move to an area of the city, not because you need it, but because you want to block your opponent.
Right.
So I was thinking that had some influence from chess in it as well. Chess is still popular here in the United States in that it's still sold in the big box stores. It's a game that, a lot of people have in their homes. There are chess clubs at schools, and I know our friendly local game store, Great Escape, has a night every week for chess.
Yeah.
Where people who want to play chess can come to the store and sit down and play chess.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those games where it's like it totally fits with the theme of this episode as far as games that have stood the test of time. And I'm sure there are loads and loads of games that have been indirectly or directly influenced by chess in one way or another. And it may not even be super obvious, and it may not even be super obvious to the designer of the game, but I feel like it's definitely, set the tone for some abstract games.
I know one of the things that I've learned in working with Sarah Reed on the show is that she's a game designer, and one of the things that she does is she will play all kinds of games just so that she can learn new things, new strategies, new mechanics for incorporating in her own game designs. And so she will even play games that are outside of her comfort zone, just so she can expose herself to the ideas and the mechanics of it, which I think are wonderful. And chess is also one of those games that, it's one of those games that parents and aunts and uncles expose maybe not young children to, but maybe like older children to, as a way to start the critical thinking and strategic thinking lessons going. Yeah. I recently backed a chess game on Kickstarter that's called Storyboard Chess.
Oh.
And it's designed to teach young children how to play chess. And I have a 4-year-old niece, and I now also have 2 newborn nieces, so two more girls to expose to board games. But Storyboard Chess, what they did was they took the chess pieces and they developed these characters that fit over the pieces. And then there's a story about each of the characters.
That's really cool.
And the story teaches them how these characters can move.
Very cool.
So
cute.
That's really a neat idea.
And the chess pieces, the traditional chess pieces, are behind the character. So you're looking at the actual piece. You're not looking at the character when you're playing, but you're moving them according to how the story says that person can move. And eventually you just take the characters off and you know how to move the pieces. So
wow.
I thought that was really clever. I'm waiting to take delivery of that so that I could teach my niece Walker Lynn how to play chess.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's so many things. I read that Johnny Annie, who made Hive, was directly inspired by chess.
Hive is another one, yeah.
And there's so many direct things, like you've got colour chess, which you can only move things on certain colour squares, and you've got Nightmare Chess, which I think was Steve Jackson Games, at one point anyway. I might be wrong on that, but you've got all these random effects and it's completely ridiculous. And you've got 3D chess, of course. And there's not only has it directly influenced things, but people have made their own unofficial sequels, I guess, because it is public domain, which is I guess there's that much asymmetry between the different ways that the pieces move that there's just a bit more to it compared to Go, so people want to play around with it.
Now, have either of you ever played 3D chess?
Mm-mm. I have not.
I have attempted to play it.
I've only ever seen it on Star Trek. But I would be interested in giving it a try if I ever came across a board. But yeah, I always found it interesting that was one board game that lasted into the 24th century. So.
Definitely.
It's completely melts your brain. I mean, for me, even just sort of seeing all the ways that things can move on and all the places of influence on a 2D board is enough, let alone on a 3D board. It's just, okay, I didn't see any of that, and just kind of comes down to who makes the fewest mistakes almost. But I only gave it the one go. Okay.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, what other games can make it into the 23rd and 24th centuries, besides chess. Will games like Pandemic and Ticket to Ride still be around? And, and even Bridge and Mancala, will they still be played in the 23rd and 24th centuries?
Right.
I mean,
probably.
Do you think there's a particular type of game that lasts a lot of time? I mean, we've talked about 3 different abstracts from really long ago, and Bridge is pretty abstract. I mean, obviously, we didn't talk about quite a few modern classics where we're bringing in a lot. I guess chess and Go kind of have a theme, although it's not as pretty. But yeah, do you think we'll still have Twister or dexterity games in 300 years?
I'm sure that we will, because people like those types of games. Different people like those different types of games. I enjoy dexterity games. Mark does not. And so, I think it just depends. And I think there will be hundreds and thousands of more different games based on, or influenced by these games. So it's just interesting to see, how some of these games not only last and, like we said, stand the test of time, but they also have a lot of influence on newer games. So that's what makes this topic, I think, worth talking about. All right. I want to thank you both for joining me for this discussion. I think this has been a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
The Dice Tower Network is a proud supporter of the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund. The board gaming community is kind and generous, and this fund was created to provide financial assistance to members of the board gaming community in their time of need. If your game is turned upside down and you need assistance, please visit jackvassell.org/apply. Find out how we can help.
All right, so now we're winding things down and looking ahead to what we've got on our plate coming up. Erin, what have you got coming out next?
Oh my goodness, it's been a crazy month, this month of March in 2019. But basically, what's on my plate is I am releasing my next book called Board Game World, and it's published by Renegade Game Studios. I am no longer self-publishing my board game books. I have partnered up with Renegade Game Studios, who have published a lot of great board games like Lanterns, the Harvest Festival, and Clank, and a variety of other games. They've been in the industry for a little over 4 years now and have definitely made a splash into the industry.
They have. They published some of my favorite board games.
Yep. So, but basically, Board Game Worlds is an art book for board gamers. It celebrates over 10 of the top board game artists in the industry, and it's basically you're going to be able to flip through gorgeous pages of board game artwork and learn more about the artist through interviews. Unlike my first book, it's not just interviews. I would say about a fourth of the book is actual interviews, whereas 3/4 of the book is just awesome pages of board game artwork, not only finished illustrations, but like early sketches, and really seeing the entire evolution of how a lot of board games artwork came to be.
I was just so, I guess, teaming up with Renegade, it sounds like it made life a lot easier for you, but I guess they still let you do whatever you want in terms of having full editorial control.
Correct. Yeah, I'm totally still, the head of the content and making sure the book is what I want it to be. And they've been really supportive and have basically kind of let me, control the reins in a sense as far as the content of the book, whereas they can bring their expertise as far as printing and shipping and really getting our costs low and making sure our backers receive the best book possible.
Nice.
It's really cool.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited.
Bez, what have you got coming up?
Well, in the world of not board games, I've got a friend coming over at the end of this week, coming over from Thailand, which is super exciting. And we've not seen each other for years, so having them over, and I'm going to have to tidy my room a lot and possibly do a little bit of decluttering. Because while I've been in Glasgow, I've recently taken stock of about 2,144 games in the past week, which is...
Oh, wow.
I finished a couple of Kickstarters that were meant to ship a while ago, but because last year was a difficult one for me, I told everyone, hey, everyone's been super understanding, but basically now I've got all the games in the house, and so now it's kind of time to put them all into envelopes and send them out to people. So there's going to be a lot of doing that. And yeah, that's really exciting. And once in a couple of months, that will be out in shops, which I look forward to. And I've got a festival type thing coming up in London. If you're in London, if you're in the Waterloo area, then you should come to a thing called Now Play This, which opens up on April the 6th, I want to say. And on April the 14th, I'm running a wee workshop, but also my Wibble++ card game system is going to be part of that. And so that's super exciting because it's lovely to be part of a convention, but this is kind of like for a lot of video games, and they've got board games, so they've got like super experimental stuff. So like they have games which are, this year the theme is society, and they haven't really announced what else is going to be there, but it's always super interesting. So definitely come over if you're in London. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that I've been up in Glasgow just now for a year, and I've been talking to a board game cafe, Lucky Sparrow, about starting organised play for a couple of my games and having them sorts of organised competitions, because I still do 2 p.m. events every place I go. And it's like saying, hey, if you run it and learn the game and run it on my behalf, then I'll send you a whole bunch of prizes. So hopefully, that's good for the board game cafe. It brings in people in there, and obviously for me it's great because it gets people playing my games and hopefully continuing to spread it. But yeah, I'm just like, honestly, like, life is looking really great, and I've got a lot to be excited about. Sorry for monopolizing for a couple of minutes.
No problem. It sounds like you've got a lot going on. It's fun. What's the game that you're mailing out?
Oh, so one of them is Kitty Cataclysm, which is my third thing, which is all about cats and chaos and card play. And basically you've got to it's all about having the most meowny, and so every turn you play a card and you put it into your kitty, and at the end the people with the most cards in the most meowny in their kitty and also in their paws wins the game. But if you've got too many cards, if you're too greedy and you're holding more than 6 or 7 cards, you can be hurt with a cat-ass trophy or a cataclysm. And those punish anyone who's got too many cards in their paws. And so it's a really quick, chaotic game. It takes about 3 minutes up to 12 minutes, but normally about 7 or 10. But it's a good laugh, and I'm really proud of it. And I'm looking forward to getting it out there and seeing what people think of it. And the other thing that I'm also mailing out at the same time, because I kind of did 2 Kickstarters to print them together, is a deluxe version of my game system, Wibble++. So now I've just redone it. It's in a nicer box, because I thought, I want to have nicer boxes for my things, and it's got instructions on paper instead of on cards, which was kind of just a way to cut costs the first time around. And the box is literally golden and shiny, and the card quality is basically as good as it can possibly be. And so, I mean, I'm really proud of this game system, because there's literally hundreds of games that you can play with it. And I had a competition last 1st of August for a design competition, and I had 21 entries, I was really flattered by everyone putting in their energy. But what I want to say is kind of there's 8 what I call the core games, which I say these are the best games, the best starting points. But I'm really, looking forward to, and this is the same one that I say will be renamed. And some of the current my favourites are I don't know whether any of those will actually be the winning one, but tell me what you think of these names. I've got Alphagorical, or the Deck of Babel.
Those are good. I think I like Alphagorical.
Okay.
Me too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's a pretty that's actually from my housemate, so they'll be really happy to hear that.
Okay. All right. So, I have some plans coming up. Today, after we get done recording here, I am going to go down to the Bay Area here in California and visit my grandma, who is, like I said earlier, 99 years old. She just turned 99 at the beginning of March.
Wow.
And she still lives on her own.
That's awesome.
Last year, the Department of Motor Vehicles renewed her driver's license for 5 years.
Wow.
So she will be 103 when her driver's license expires.
She's a
not
rock star.
actually. She is. She's not actually driving herself around anymore.
Oh.
So when she told me that she renewed her driver's license, I said, "But you're not driving, Grandma." And she goes, "I know, but I'm just not a quitter."
Oh, wow. She sounds like an awesome lady.
Is this the same person who said that Flux is a dumb game and then played it 5 times?
Yes. This is my gamer grandma. She's always telling me, "Oh, I'm not smart enough to play these new games," and then she beats me at them. So yeah, I've started calling her gamer grandma. And then next weekend, I have an event for my new nonprofit organization. It's called Your Turn Events. And Your Turn Community Game Events is the full name. And we are holding a free open house, basically, at the Valley High North Laguna Library here in Sacramento. And people are welcome to just drop in, and we'll teach you how to play some new board games. The idea is to grow and diversify the board gaming community here in Sacramento. So we're, advertising. And Monday after work, I'm going to go out to Cosumnes River College, which is near that library, and hand out some flyers, and hopefully we'll get some college kids to come over to play. And then for future events, we're planning to reach out to the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and the Boys and Girls Clubs. And I know we're looking to connect with some veterans groups here in the Sacramento area and some senior groups. So if you're a part of any group that you think would benefit from being exposed to modern hobby board games, just reach out and connect with me. You can get a hold of me at feedback@ourturnpodcast.com and let me know and give me your contact information. So I'm excited about that.
Sounds super awesome.
We've been working for over a year to get this organization set up, and we had a very small, very quietly kind of publicized, let's see how many of our own people show up event in January, and then in February we didn't have an event, so this is going to be our second one in March, and we're just kind of trying to ease our way into it so that we're putting on good quality events. We're
Right.
going to make each one improve not only the event itself, but how we get the word out about it and things like that, because it's all a learning process for us.
Right.
For sure.
We got nonprofit status through the federal government and through the state of California, and so we're off and running.
That's a lot of organisation. Well done. And yeah,
Thank you.
I hope the second event goes brilliantly.
Oh, thank you. I'm hoping so too. Yeah. So, all right, Erin, where can people connect with you if they want to reach out to you online?
Yes, so they can check out my personal website, erin-dean.com. Erin Dean was already taken, darn it. But you can reach out to me, erin-dean.com. That's ERIN-DEAN. And my handles for Instagram and Twitter is DeanMachine100. No, I am not embarrassed by that name. And then on Facebook, you can just search my name, Erin Dean. And you'll probably find that we have mutual friends in the board gaming community, and you can connect with me that way too.
Okay. And Bez, how can people connect with you online?
Well, I've got a website. It's stuffbybez.com, and I'm on Twitter as stuffbybez and Instagram as stuffbybez, which is STUFFBYBEZ. And then on Facebook, you can search for Stuff by Bez, but because Facebook doesn't let you have the F and the B next to each other in the URL, it's actually facebook.com/thingsbybez. But if you search for Stuff by Bez, you'll find me. And if you want to shoot me a friend request and kind of let me know, shoot me a message at the same time, like I do, because otherwise I get confused and anxious. But anyway, yeah, that's me.
All right. And you can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Our Turn Podcast. I also have at Cathy's Brain. I am trying to check that one more often, but I just haven't been. And then I'm also the Guildmaster on our Board Game Geek Guild, which is guild number 2600. And then Sarah Reed runs our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/OurTurnPodcast. And then also you can find our show notes at OurTurnPodcast.com/episode 106. Erin and Bez, thank you for joining me for this episode.
Thank you for having us.
Much.
It's been a lot of fun. All right, until next time, and on behalf of the entire Our Turn Podcast crew, that was our turn.
And now it's yours.
Thank you for listening. This episode was recorded on March 24th, 2009, and is written and produced by Cathy Ford, Erin Dean, and Bez Shahriari, with assistance from Brett Fodor and Mark Ford. Next time, we'll discuss streaming games on Twitch. We want and encourage your questions, comments, and feedback. Please call 916-426-2873 and leave us a short voicemail, or send an email to feedback@ourturnpodcast.com. Our theme music was composed by Adriana Crickle. Incidental music was provided by Purple Planet Music. Please check out our show notes to learn more about these talented artists. The material in this episode is copyrighted under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. If you want to learn more about the games discussed in this episode, please visit our website at OurTurnPodcast.com/episode 106. You can find a list of games along with links to their listing on BoardGameGeek.com. We are proud members of the Dice Tower Network. You can find out about other shows in the network like Meeple Overboard, Cardboard and Wine, or Solosaurus by going to DicetowerNetwork.com. Thank you for your support. If you like what you heard, please tell your friends about us.